From his early days throwing parties in Boston to his infamous pizza reviews, El Presidente of Barstool Sports, Dave Portnoy has cemented himself as a legend in media. Since starting Barstool in 2003, he's successfully grown it into a multi-million-dollar business with multiple hit shows under its umbrella. Recently, Portnoy was able to accomplish an insane business feat when he successfully sold his company for a total of $450 million, then bought it back for just $1. In this video, we'll go into detail about how he was able to do this and where Barstool stands as a company today. Portnoy grew up in the town of Swampscott, Massachusetts, and would go on to attend the University of Michigan after high school. Self-described as a degenerate gambler, while at university, the first website he started was called thegamblingman.com. Once he graduated, he moved back to Boston and worked for an IT market research firm. He did sales, and after working there for about 4 years, he quit and founded Barstool Sports in 2003. He sold about $30,000 to $40,000 of advertising for the paper before it even launched. The concept came from Portnoy's love of gambling. He wanted to get involved in the industry, so he flew to Vegas to speak with casinos. After that, he met with some offshore sports books, which were illegal at the time, that were willing to advertise through a physical newsletter because advertising online for poker sites looked a bit scammy at the time. One of the first advertisers was the website Party Poker, and this was the birth of Barstool.
So here, the concept came this way. I like gambling. I want to get into gambling. I was like, that's what I like to do. So I actually, at the time, I flew to Vegas, met with all these casinos. I'm like, how do I get involved in this industry?
It started off as a 4-page sports newspaper that Portnoy would hand out on the subway and street corners in Boston. Its content mainly consisted of fantasy sports and gambling lines, and then slowly developed into Portnoy's personality, as it was primarily written by Portnoy himself, who would write under various monikers because he didn't want anyone to know it was only him. He'd even get some of his childhood friends to write, like Todd McShay before he joined ESPN. Early on, Portnoy would do whatever he could to get advertisers. He'd purposely advertise various restaurants without permission, then call competitors and ask if they wanted in.
So what I did, it's like I wanted Morton's Steakhouse to advertise or Abe and Louie's. So I'd just take a picture of Fleming's Steakhouse and I would stick it in the newspaper. And I'd call Morton's, be like, hey, your competitor's advertising.
With little money, he'd leverage credit, borrow money from family, and hire interns who'd contribute for free. He was living with his in-laws while trying to make ends meet. One of the moves that got Barstool some clout in the city was when they started putting local models on the covers and throughout the newspaper. It started off as a contest where you'd pick a girl and vote the local smoke show of the day, and the winner would advance. This caused the paper to really go crazy around Boston. In 2007, the paper would expand into a blog site. A fan of the paper actually offered to make a website for Portnoy at no charge because he was moving to New York from Boston and he wanted to be able to read it online. Immediately, Portnoy noticed that he was able to reach a much larger audience via the internet. It was the year 2010, and Portnoy decided to start throwing parties and called it Stoolpalooza. He wanted to get some musical acts involved, and so he paid local artist Sam Adams to perform. In total, the parties would cost $20,000 to put together. They threw 6 shows in total, and they all sold out. The parties were actually so hectic that Amherst police banned him from the campus. This was the first endeavor that made any real revenue for the company, which allowed them to hire writers and rent an office in Milton. One of those writers was Dan Katz, aka Big Cat, the current host for the popular podcast Pardon My Take. He was a regular caller on the Barstool Power Hour. After finding out they were hiring in Chicago, he applied and got the gig. He was instantly a fan favorite as he was relatable and had a good sense of humor.
Big Cat Dan used to call in at the Power Hour with me and Elio. I had no idea who he was, but he was like a regular caller on the Power Hour.
Yeah, what's up, guys? How you guys doing? Good. Long-time listener since all the way back in November.
After the success of the first endeavor, Portnoy decided to go bigger with the parties and called it back to Stool. The musical acts for this tour included Mac Miller, Chitty Bang, Mike Posner, and White Panda. He went from spending $20,000 for the entire tour to spending $100,000 for just musical talent alone, with the hopes of more tickets being sold. But unfortunately, there wasn't a huge uptick in sales. Considering how much they spent, the company was in the negative, and Portnoy believed they were going under. Despite the shortcoming, Barstool was able to survive and was able to continue its operation. Now, during Barstool's run, Portnoy infamously created a lot of controversy. One of the biggest being Howitzergate. In 2011, Portnoy posted a photo of Tom Brady's infant son naked on the beach with wife Giselle in a blog post. It went crazy in the media, and Portnoy caught a storm of criticism for it. He would get ridiculed by the likes of Howard Stern and exiled from New England sports radio show WEEI.
I was on everywhere from Howard Stern to like NPR Emily Rooney. I mean, it was It was a big story.
He lost advertisers in Milton and Coors Light, and there were protests in the street. But in true Portnoy fashion, he doubled down and stayed 10 toes, saying he still thought it was a funny joke.
I stand by that post. That post is a joke. People were like, oh, he's sexualizing like a little kid. No, you're a pervert. It was an infant. The kid was like a week old. Just happened to have a fucking piece.
Even though Back to Stool didn't work out, Portnoy still continued to throw parties as it was their primary source of income. This run was known as the Blackout Tour. It was a simple concept. They'd buy black lights and have everyone come in white, hence the name. These parties were absolute mayhem. There were no rules and could only really survive for the short period that they did. The parties gained a ton of traction due to video highlight reels that were going around showing how lit the parties were. Now, this was technically a good thing, but with anything that's chaotic to this extent, it becomes very difficult to maintain any type of control. Kids were getting way too drunk, fights broke out, there were overdoses, and soon enough, Barstool was under siege from all fronts in a media shitstorm. Barstool was being accused of promoting rape culture and being sexist. They were banned from multiple venues across the country. The media was describing the parties as dangerous, and there were protests in the street. It quickly became a PR disaster. Post-Blackout Tour, Barstool continued to grow significantly. They had athletes contributing to their content. Their brand was recognized all across the country. And Portnoy had an incredible eye for talent. The amount of talent employed under the Barstool umbrella over the years is pretty remarkable, including the likes of Jenna Marbles, Pat McAfee, Big Cat, and Caleb Presley, to name a few. In the mid-2010s, Portnoy was content with where Barstool was. They were making good money, and the pirate ship was in a good place. He had no intention in selling the company. That is until Chernin Media Group came in 2016 and made him an offer. The group invested a reported $10 to $15 million into Barstool, making Portnoy no longer majority owner and moving the company's headquarters to Manhattan.
We are in Times Square. Elmo's around. It's -5 degrees. And we have what I would say is shocking news. I am no longer the majority owner of Barstool Sports. We have taken investment from an investment company called Chernin Digital. Peter Chernin, big swinging dick at the Cracker Factory.
After the deal was when some of the biggest shows on the network were spawned, such as Pardon My Take, Call Her Daddy, $1 million worth of game. In 2020, Penn Entertainment bought Barstool for a whopping $450 million in a two-step process. They acquired Barstool with the intention of releasing the Barstool Sportsbook app and to use its trademark without having to pay any ongoing licensing fee. But with this came a lot of issues. Regulators had very tight-laced policies, which both Penn and Barstool didn't see coming. Considering Barstool's branding, it for sure caused compliance issues. Before the company and its shows could pretty much say what they wanted, and there wasn't much you could do. But with Penn involved, a regulator could start playing games with licenses or issue penalties. Because of this, Penn decided to pivot, and they wanted to find a different partner, one that was in the middle of restructuring, doing layoffs, and looking for new revenue. In comes ESPN. Now, regulators were giving Penn another shot, but they still needed to do something about Barstool. This is when Penn goes to Portnoy and asks him to buy the company back for $1. Portnoy would get 100% control of the company again, and in return, he'd have to sign a non-compete, not disparage Penn or ESPN in any way, and if Portnoy ever sells, Penn gets 50%, which he addressed by saying, "I'm never gonna sell." Once everything was in order, Penn struck a deal with ESPN for 10 years and $2 billion, thus renaming the Barstool Sportsbook app to ESPN Bet. And now, ESPN has officially joined the online sports gambling world. So now Portnoy is officially back as El Prez. As you may have heard in the news, he's been doing a bunch of layoffs. Barstool still has some of the biggest podcasts in the world right now, going strong, and Portnoy is still consistently doing his pizza reviews.
Let me be a little clearer. Move on. Don't stand in front of my business.
Let me be clear. Fuck
Let
you.
me be clear.
Fuck
Get
you.
the fuck out.
We'll see how things progress from here. Shout out to all the Stoolies, and Viva La Stool.